because he is one of the most busiest person in the world. And when I say busiest, I mean it in the sense that he is one of the most busiest persons in pursuits which help public enterprises, which help state governments, which help federal government, which help people on the whole. His life is a mission. I was just talking to him, and he takes everything as a mission. He started with the mission of improving public enterprise performance 30 years back. He was a loner. People didn't know the concept of performance improvement 30 years back. Single-handedly, he brought the concept at the central stage, and then you see that not only public enterprises are benefited, but in academics, happened with a PhD from there, Dr. Gita, our colleague here, did a PhD on performance contracts in public enterprise. And some of us, we also earn our bread through that. So he created employment, I think, for many of us. And employment here means meaningful employment. First thing, I think I'm very proud of the fact that we know him, and you see of Prajapati Trivedi. He is a learned scholar, a great administrator, and a person, as I told you, mission-oriented person. He got the concept of performance improvement extended from public sector enterprises to government itself. And today, Dr. Prajapati Trivedi is engaged in a pursuit which is there to improve the performance of the government as a whole. There is no department of the government, there is no ministry of the government which is beyond the performance management context. Each ministry now has to negotiate its objectives and its goals with the government. I think that's a very, very great contribution. And if you don't mind, maybe that I'm overwhelmed to see, but I'm sure you are not more happier to see him. Please give a rousing welcome to him in the future. That's why I told that. I know that there are some eyes, they always change, and we have a librarian here, Sundar Murthy, who always changes and tells us whether we are working or not working. And her method of measuring our performance is publications and how many times they are quoted and cited. And she was telling that all of us put together don't come anywhere. We don't come within 10% of what Prajapati Trivedi has done. She has shown me a number of papers. Of course, some of them I have read earlier also. But then she brought out a paper on performance measurement frontiers, evaluation of government in New Zealand, then program agreements in Malaysia, then performance contracts in Kenya, improving government performance, what can measured get done, a general piece of writing, performance contract between the government of Kenya and the Permanent Secretary Minister of Agriculture, frontiers of public sector management, and several other pieces of writing. You will see these, I think, classic books in our library. And not only that, I think as a teacher also he owed his responsibility and he fulfilled it by writing a very good textbook on managerial economics. I was suggesting to my colleagues, because some of them remember, I think to Dr. Nanda Sethi herself, that please read that book, because that's a book where we talk not only of concepts, but we ensure that those concepts are very well understood and grasped by the students. So I found, I think, a great novelty in the book. I also used the book a bit, but friends, when I say this, let me also tell you that Dr. Prajapati Trivedi is a very rare person who has successfully, wrote a number of steps. And today, on the one hand, is looking after the performance measurement of the entire government, of its different ministries, different kind of ministers, different kind of departments. I think that's full of complexity, but he's looking into that. On the other hand, he also holds under office is chairman, National Authority Chemical Weapons Convention of the Cabinet Secretariat. I think this is one thing which I think is very, very crucial and which is of great vital importance to the country. So he is in that area. But I don't think we can describe Professor Prajapati Trivedi by saying any of these things. I'll say these are a very small part of what one could see and understand. But there are so many things to talk about him. But what entities us is the fact that Dr. Prajapati Trivedi, who is so extremely busy, who is so much sought after, who has so much to do, would think of coming to the institute and blessing us. His very presence, I think to me, I think to all of us, gives, I think, a new perspective, new zeal, and I think new perspective to move forward and do as much possible for ourselves, for the institute, and for the country. When I say that, let me also tell you that he was not feeling well. He has to, he has to take a number of meetings. Immediately after this, he has to take another meeting. But then he ensured that he visits IP. In fact, that was the purpose which was there with him when he was traveling from Delhi to this place. That shows that he has not forgotten this small institute. And somebody asked me that whether your institute is small or big. I told it is small, but now we are on the path to become somewhat bigger because we are a very big person in our midst. Thank you very much, sir, and we welcome you and look forward to the release of the journal also, which Professor Trivedi has agreed, but that will take place now.
Thank you, Professor Mishra. Now you know why I love to come to Institute, and with this kind of warmth and tremendous welcome, this is truly a home, and this kind of warmth is enough to keep me alive for the next 10 years. He's so kind and he's always so encouraging, and it's this kind of thing that keeps you alive in this business of public policy and public management. He has been very kind in introducing me in ways which I didn't think were possible, but he managed to do so. I will give you my own introduction as to be totally transparent. I am basically an economist who's done economics and taught economics. I do all these other things because I believe in them, but to keep bread on the table, I basically teach economics and deal with economics. So I'll take an old story from economics, which all of you who have done a basic 101 level course would understand. And this story goes, you know that economics, they say, is like looking for a black cat in a dark room. That's what they say economics is. Within economics, as Professor Mishra mentioned, I have written a book on economic theory, which they say is like a blind man looking for a black cat in a dark room. Within economic theory, I specialize in econometrics, which all of you know, that is use of statistics in economics. And that they say is like a blind man looking for a black cat in a dark room when the cat is not even there. Well, Secretary Performance Management in Government of India goes a step beyond that. He is a blind man looking for a black cat in a dark room when the cat is not there, and he keeps saying, I've got it, I've got it. So my job is to pretend to have answers to all these difficult questions. But when I'm among friends and almost my home, I have to be completely transparent. What I will be sharing with you is my experience, my journey through exploring and finding answers, not necessarily the answers, and where we have left. There are no perfect answers to any of these challenging issues. They are always evolving. It's like any technology. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect phone. Tomorrow there will be a better phone. Technology evolves. So does the management technology. When people say, oh, we did this, we did that, so what, you did this. Technology changes, so does the management technology changes. So I will be taking you through the journey of where we are as far as public management is concerned.
So can you take half a minute? Something can you speak?
Sure.
Actually, we have listed a lot of things.
Please. No, please. Speak that. I want to.
You want me? Okay.
Very briefly, I will take you through the profile of Trivedi. Dr. Prajapati Trivedi has led a distinguished career as a world-class economist and educator. As a senior economic advisor with Government of India, he played a significant role in the design of economic reforms in general and the country's disinvestment program in particular. He has served the World Bank as privatization and enterprise reform specialist in the private sector development department at Washington, D.C. In the advisory capacity, he has assisted numerous countries, including Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Sri Lanka, Gaza, there are many, South Korea, Venezuela, Colombia, Romania, etc. In his current assignment as Secretary Government of India, he is responsible for performance management and reviews performance reports of all government departments to the Cabinet Secretary as well as the Prime Minister. He is also the chairman of the National Authority for Chemical Weapons and Convention, as Professor Mishra has already told. Dr. Trivedi has Masters in Economics from London School and Doctorate in Economics from Boston University. He has authored books on public sector management and privatization. We are greatly honored to have you here, sir.
Well, that's my story. I would still insist that is the correct version. Anyhow, so, there could be several titles to this. I thought one is Frontiers of Public Sector Management in Search of Better Performance. A more appropriate, perhaps, for what I do now is How to Improve Government Performance, Challenges, Possible Solutions, and Lessons of International Experience. Now, I want you to keep a few pictures in mind, because pictures are important to convey the message of what it is. Currently, this is the document that we are all working with. We have worked with one set of documents for 59 ministries and departments, and it is called the Results Framework Document. This is the standard format. This is for the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises for the year 2009-2010, and we just concluded them, and they've been signed and sealed. Keep this picture in mind. I'll come back to it. This is the concrete product that we will be talking about. The rest will be a matter of concepts and background to this. The other is, if time permitting and if there is wireless technology here. Is there wireless internet here? In that case, I'll be happy to show you a software that we have developed that the entire, think of those of you who know the MOU, that the entire process of the Results Framework document is done online. It's the first G2G, government-to-government system in central government. There are G2C, G2B, but no G2G. In other words, all government departments get a password. It's called a Results Framework Management System. They log in and they put their Results Framework document online, and it closes at the due date, and then all they can do is put their inputs, their achievements, and the Prime Minister can see their achievements on a daily basis. So what we say is, look, if you built the road, if you've done the school, put it in. If it's not there, that means you haven't done it. So therefore, it is almost a 24-hour, and the maximum, as I will explain to you, the maximum score is 100. So the journey starts from 0, and you can see how departments are moving towards 100 or not. And the Prime Minister can get a ranking of departments' performance on a daily basis, monthly, whichever period he chooses to. So it's a very powerful tool that we have developed, and it's amazing. Only in India this could have happened. I've worked, as Geeta pointed out, in more than 26 countries. I don't think it would be possible anywhere. We did it in a record time of 3-4 months. Even though NIC gets a bad rap and does not have a good reputation, they deliver. They deliver when the chips are down, when you're clear what you want, they deliver. It's a public enterprise, it's a public sector organization. All it needs is clarity of goals and some accountability, and it works. And when you don't have clarity of goals and no accountability, NIC is just like any other public enterprise. All right, keep this picture in mind. Maybe we'll have time to visit this. The broad outline of what I'd like to discuss this afternoon with you. And Professor Mishra, how much time do I have? Okay. I'm maturely spoken. So, the main points I'd like to discuss this afternoon is our perception about government performance, explanation about government performance, meaning of government performance, how to improve government performance, international best practices and our options, lessons of experience, and summing up. So that really is what I like to sort of go through. But my long years of dealing with workshops and seminars and presentations has taught me that it is best to sort of give the highlights early on. Much of what I will be talking about, because in the limited time that I have, I can't discuss everything. But you can find on our website, this is called www.performance.gov.in. This is the Cabinet Secretary's performance management website. You can get all the papers, all the latest things. Of course, website management leaves much to be desired because we are moving so fast they can't keep up. So, but they eventually manage to keep up, and we hope to improve the performance of this website, so it can be really, really on time. But it's a great website. You find most of the facts, most of the background material on international experience, everything you will find. The results framework documents, all 59 will be online, so you can look for all departments. And we welcome your suggestions, because that's how it will improve. And that's why it's not my idea, it was Prime Minister's order that put it on the web. So the citizens of India should know what departments are committing, what results they are committing, so they can hold them directly responsible. If they don't like the results, they can tell us, sir, this department should be doing this. So I think this is a change, a big one, looks very simple. But as I said, I want to summarize, this you already have. I've given you some copies of our newsletter that comes out, and I hope many of you will contribute to this, in which I'm absolutely thrilled actually to see the progress IT has made over the years. I mean, the number of journals and the tenacity and the sustainability and the courage that you are bringing out, the IP journal, I think I've written in that as well, is remarkable. So I salute you, and I hope we'll benefit from your efforts in keeping this alive, because it's important to keep things alive in the government as well. These are some. Let me show you another picture which you must keep in mind to fully understand the lecture that I'm about to, or the points I'm about to make, is this picture. It's a very common picture, many of you have seen it. It comes out in India Today. This is an old issue of India Today, but it comes out frequently. Now many other magazines have started bringing this out. And basically it is, as you can see, a report card, minister's report card, where all the ministers have been ranked in the descending order of their performance. Mr. Chidambaram, this was a few years back when he was finance minister. But you know, if you go down, you find that ministers have got a precise ranking. You know, they have got 50 out of 100, 34 out of 100. I mean, people have been 46, you know, Raghuvansh Prasad Singh. So I got curious. As a student of performance and performance management, I said, let me read more about the methodology they're using. They seem to be geniuses. This is my live stream, and they have done it already and put it on the magazine. So I looked at the methodology in the editorial of India Today. I'm expanding it for you. I don't know if you can see, Professor, over there. If you can lower these lights as well, if you like. If you have difficulty looking at it. These two lights can also go.
Front lights.
Front lights. According to India Today, they argue that this ranking is based on performance and perception. I am not easily satisfied. I called the editor of India Today and I said, so please explain how did you do this performance and perception. To cut the long story short, it turns out at the end, it was basically more of perception than performance. Because they don't have enough information on what departments are really doing. Whatever they get, it's all piecemeal, cursory and partial, not comprehensive view of the department. Even I in the government find it hard to get information. I don't know how journalists can get full information. And so it was, if you are glib, you can speak well, you do more conferences, you seem to be active, you seem to get a higher scope, basically. Now that's not fair to the citizens of India. They're not paying us or the public servants to act. They're paying to actually deliver results. And that, I'm afraid, these rankings do not capture. They're sensational. But they do one thing. They point out to the basic hunger in the people who are governed, that they want to know how the people who are governing them are doing. They want to hold them accountable. So that's one hunger. If the government doesn't do it, if we don't do it right, nature does not like vacuum, it will fill it up with something. And then we don't have a reason to complain. Because this is a natural tendency. Everybody wants it, that's why the newspaper sells. So instead of letting newspapers do it, I think we've decided that maybe the government ought to do it in a more systematic, scientific, objective, and a fair manner, which is fair to everyone concerned. So I think that, in a way, is interesting. I want you to keep some more pictures in mind before I come to my outline. I will come to the outline, I promise, but I want you to do all that because, you see, this is an annual report, and there's an outcome budget. You'll find there's a pattern. The annual reports are glossy, nice, and shiny. Annual reports, you can see outcome budgets are always, poor cousins of annual reports. They look like, they go spiral binding in the other case. In this particular case, look at it, textiles. You can't capture the glitz and the glamour of these reports in the scanned copy, but the actual copies are extremely attractive. Whereas the outcome budget is the blasé, pure vanilla kind. In this case, they have even used the packing tape for the outcome budget. And there is a reason, because the annual report is meant to be a public relations document, where I have done some research to find that when you go back why the annual report is a mandatory requirement, a parliamentary requirement, it is supposed to be like the annual report of a company, the audited annual report, which means it must give both sides of the picture and the true picture. It cannot, like the audited reports, cannot just hide all the bad things. They have to, in fact, they have to mention audit objections also in the report itself, that these were the audit objections. And they have to say that these audit accounts are prepared, and whether it's profit and loss, you have to show. Unfortunately, the annual reports, while the intentions of the founding fathers was, they will be the balance sheet for the departments presented to the parliament, which are the shareholders or the stakeholders. Unfortunately, stand out, they just present one side of the picture. All the good things that have happened, not a single bad thing is ever presented. All the big things, all the functions, the ribbons that are being cut, projects that are being launched, but not all the slippages in the targets, all the kinds of leakages, misutilization or lack of utilization of it. None of those is really ever highlighted. So as a result, these reports have failed to serve the purpose they were supposed to. Crores of rupees are spent in printing hundreds and thousands of copies, and they have not achieved the accountability they were meant to. But we will fix that. Now that it has come under scanner, you can be rest assured I am not the one who just highlights the problem. Any problem that I am highlighting, we are working on solving it soon. And outcome budgets, nobody really cares in the government. Now it's become a complete routine exercise. They are presented, nobody follows up. They just print it and they just put in the parliament at the last minute. Nobody knows what to do with it. They're such bulky documents and they're so expenditure related, and everything is just wrong about outcome budget. But I should not run them down, because they have served a very important process, and they have done a very important service to the nation, that they have brought out the concept of outcome, that outcomes are important. At least that has been accepted. People try, they have not succeeded, but they try to bring out the outcomes. So to that extent, they have taken the mindset one stage further towards the right direction. And so they have done their historical assignment, if you like. And they have taken us to the next stage, which is where we are. Now let me just go through the select points before I go to my outline. And this again comes from long years of experience of delivering lectures and seminars and workshops, that anything can happen. I've been in workshops where there has been an actual earthquake in Egypt, and I couldn't finish, and then I regretted. I said, at least I could have made my important points before the earthquake came. So now I've changed my strategy. I make my important points. If there is an earthquake, we'll all be set. I'll go back to Delhi knowing that at least you're all familiar with my main message. God forbid that should not happen. So the first is accountability for results trickles down, it never trickles up. You cannot hold the bottom, when you try to have accountability at a departmental level or a small level, it never works. Because in a dysfunctional system where the top is not accountable, you can never hold the department accountable, because it does not have the teeth, the credibility, and in fact the force of moral authority to make it happen. So accountability has to start at the top, and that's why what we are doing is starting with the top, the secretaries to the Government of India. The top has to be held accountable. Then it will trickle down, as in the case of the MOUs, when the chief executives were held accountable. Now they've started having internal MOUs. MOUs have trickled down. The methodology, the MOU philosophy, they have internal MOUs with the divisions and the general managers, and it's trickling down. That is very important. As a development economist, I can assure you, there is no magic bullet, there's no development theory which can explain or which can help us develop. Those of you who have done development economics know that we have many development theories. People have even got Nobel Prize for some of the development theories, but the level of poverty and underdevelopment seems to be stubborn. Let's put it this way. So there is no theory which can eliminate development. There is a range of theories: balanced versus unbalanced growth, Rostow's takeoff, and many other similar things. There was Washington consensus was fashionable at one point. Now nobody hears. Now what they have is something called Barcelona consensus. But the point is, if you ask me, having done development economics for the last 40 years now, one thing I have noticed, and having worked in a wide range of countries, from the most sophisticated to I have lived in Gaza. Very few people can claim to have lived in the West Bank and Gaza for 1 month in wretched conditions working with Arafat, so I know development. From there onwards, one thing I have found, what works everywhere, is countries which have an ability to transform their rhetoric into reality, where the gap between what they say and what they do is narrow, seem to develop faster. Countries which seem to say good things but not be able to do them remain underdeveloped. So it is not about anything. It is making a policy, fortunately, is not so difficult, I believe, especially in the current. If you want to make a transport policy, go to Google and do transport policy, you'll get 5,000 hits. And you will be able to cut and paste and sort of make a decent policy first round, which is okay. So having made the policy, the question is implementation. And that's where we sort of stumble. We're not able to implement. We have unlimited number of lots of good things, including our constitution, which we say all kinds of good things, but have not been able to implement many of the things. So I think implementation is terribly important, and I think that has been my great, and that's really I consider to be my central mission, is to improve the ability of the government. I'm not in the government looking after health, education. I'm sort of neutral. I care about all of them. But what I care most is that whatever you say, you must do it. So my job is to really hold the secretaries accountable for what they say. They cannot just now loosely say, oh, we'll do this, and we'll brag about what they can do, and there's no one at the end to check. Now they have someone who checks closely as to what they say. So hopefully they will start doing more in the gap, or start saying less, and at least we'll have a more realistic idea of what can happen and what should happen. Implementation depends on effective follow-up. I mean, if you don't follow up and you just issue orders, things don't get done. Effectiveness of follow-up and monitoring depends on quality and not the quantity of monitoring and evaluation. Very important, because many of you know, since this is the Institute of Public Enterprise, and I think the time has come that your growth is so impressive, and your range of activities from corporate governance to international economics, and it's so impressive. Perhaps Professor Mishra should be thinking that, make IPE as a brand name. Many companies do that. They make it IPE, and forget about what P stands for. Like HMT now, I don't think everybody says Hindustan Machine Tool, it's HMT. That is the name of the company, and they do lots of things. So your IPE, it would stand for Institute for Public Sector Management, and not Public Enterprise necessarily. The entire range of public sector management, which will be a much broader, bigger challenge, and a much more, I think, appropriate. So time has come for reconsidering. This is just a thought that came to my mind. But you all know, it started because you're an Institute of Public Enterprise, you know that the Department of Public Enterprise brings out a survey of public enterprises, right? In my time when I was economic advisor there used to be 5 volumes. I don't know how many volumes there are now, and 3, but they must be bulkier. And now my days they reached a size where it was not safe to carry them. I mean, you could get slip disc if you were not very careful. So, but they were completely useless information. I mean, it's just the production of financial statements, and people said, we have this, and we present this to the Parliament. What's the point of MOU? Because you already have, you're presenting so much information, they can get anything they want. This is the myth. Because you present so much information, they didn't know what to get. They're busy people. The other result, they got nothing out of that. And they kept the reports on one side and they started asking questions which have nothing to do with the enterprise, because they had no time to read this survey. So they started asking inane questions. Till MOUs came about, and now it's much more focused. In a few pages, they summarize the key things that are required. And you can still use the other information as backup for analyzing and diagnostic purposes, but not necessarily for evaluation. Degree of accountability for results is synonymous with evaluation. Evaluation techniques for management control in government are different from evaluation techniques for strategic control. Many people say we are a democracy, we already have so much accountability, we have the best results, an independent election commission. What do you talk about accountability of government? We are accountable in the government. Well, we have to make a difference between strategic control and management control. When we have elections, the citizens of India decide the direction in which the country has to go, left, right, or center. But they do not guarantee that we will move in that direction. The government can say we will go take you to the left and eradicate poverty and get elected. But it doesn't mean it is under pressure once elected to take you there. For that you need management control systems to move you in that direction that you have committed. So we need to. So the thing that I am talking about and I am responsible for is not the strategic control that democracy and our elections are taking care of. Given whatever the agenda, how do we make sure that we move towards achieving that agenda? And I am neutral. That this system will survive simply because, as MOUs, it's not about UPA or NDA or this or that. It's about implementing any agenda. It's about implementation. Evaluation is one of the three systems required for performance improvement. Very important point. It is not the only thing, and we should not kid ourselves in thinking that somehow if we evaluate, things will become all right. For evaluation to take place, you must have proper information. Then you should be able to evaluate, and then there must be incentives. If you have great information, wonderful evaluation system, but you do not link it to proper incentive system, I'm afraid performance will not come about to the desired level. So you need all three systems for this to really happen. And performance evaluation is different from performance explanation. In our country, we have a tendency, and in the government in particular, we tend to confuse between performance evaluation and performance explanation. In the name of evaluation, we always give excuses why it could not be done. Obviously, if something is not done, there is a reason why it could not be done. That's not a terribly bright point to make. The issue is, so we have to say, look, whether it was good, bad, or ugly, not say that, sir, it was good because of this, or bad, it was because of this. And then we come to reasons separately. So we have to de-link the two. Often when you combine the two, you have a tautological situation where you don't know what to do. Everything seems to have a reason, nobody seems to be accountable. So another challenge that we are facing is to separate the two. We are saying, first tell us whether you were good, bad, or ugly. Then we will go into the reasons why. And that's a separate exercise, but don't confuse the two. Don't mix it here. Just give it a short answer. Did you do it or not? If the answer is no, great. We know that you didn't do it. Now we will worry about why that happened. That's a separate issue. But there should be consequences for not having that. Okay, let's now that I've got all these things off my chest, and I can now go to the regular presentation. Let's start with, and you know all of this, so I'll speed up. I'll try to go to the end where I want to come to the latest policy, what we are up to, so that I can. I'm here not just to present this. There is a self-interest which Professor Mishra may not have highlighted, which is that I want you to be partners in this exercise. Last time when we did MOU, we had Professor Mishra and others who really, really championed it. And when they championed as an independent institute from here, was much more forceful than, us in the government or people who are working on it saying, well, you must do it. And some others say, and those who really believe it. And I'm not saying you must say it. If you believe in it, you must say it. If you don't, that's fine. We'll have to wait and convince you. We need you as partners to really move governance forward. Governance is not about, the patient cannot heal itself. And that's just, it's a contradiction in terms. It cannot happen. You cannot say government must improve governance. How can government improve governance when it itself is a victim of that, right? So outsiders are the best. Perhaps that's the reason I was brought in, because, I'm not claiming anything, but I am perhaps much more optimistic. I don't take no for an answer. I think everything is possible. And that's why I think institute like Institute of Public Enterprise could play an important role as a partner, knowledge partner in helping us move forward this agenda, the second revolution. So perception about government performance to an audience like this is well known. It's not good. I mean, I say this as inside, it doesn't bring me any joy. I have joined government many times, twice, by choice, not by chance. And so, but it pains me that we ask people from, whether from Argentina to Venezuela to Vietnam, and they'll tell you that government agencies have not delivered what was expected from them. This is also true for developed countries. That's why they are always reinventing the government. Blair was modernizing the government, Clinton set up, and Mr. Bush also, everybody, Obama talks about the broken government. I don't think it's only here, it's across the spectrum. So here in the Indian case, it seems to be a little bit more severe. You've read all these reports that Indian bureaucracy is the worst in Asia. And these kinds of cover stories do not help us. They come very frequently. Motto of the Babu, wages for attendance, overtime for work. I can go on and on, but allow me to skip these, but maybe not this one. This is from Saudi Arabia. You don't get to see this. And you see a civil servant there. There's my computer back. A government employee watching the World Cup, and all the citizens are waiting. Now in Saudi Arabia is not world famous for freedom of press. When they allow this means even the king agrees with this. So the situation of civil servants, so it's not about democracy, even in a hierarchical, somewhat rigid, let's say less democratic, to be polite, system, the problems are the same. It's not because we are a democracy, civil service is a problem. It's the same thing, because we don't have proper management control systems. Even in Russia, in China, the same problem. It's not about hierarchy, dictatorship, or democracy. It's about management control systems. So why is it that the governments do not work? Government departments do not work? I mean, as a professor, my job was to read books, and when I read, the only explanations I found were 2 or 3, and people put them in their own words, but they were basically 2 or 3 main explanations. One is that most government agencies are faced with what you can call multiple principles. Parliament, everybody thinks they can supervise the government agency. Parliament, the finance ministry, the planning ministry, the administrative ministry, the controller and auditor general, I could go on and on. But multiple principles is not a problem. After all, in the private sector, they have thousands of shareholders. The difference between the public and the private sector is that whereas in the private sector, all the shareholders have the same objective, in the public sector, they tend to have multiple objectives. Somebody wants political objectives, somebody wants non-political objectives. You can see the debate on subsidy. Somebody wants equity, somebody wants efficiency. So, and it's not just multiple objectives, they are often conflicting. So what we have is multiple principles who have multiple objectives which are often conflicting. As a result, the managers do not know what is really expected from them. So they have a fuzzy sense of expectations of what is it really you want me to do. So as a result, how can you win a race where you don't even know what race you're running? When the civil servants start to run fast, they are told, look, take it easy. And I'm telling you from my experience in this run, when I ran fast, I was told to hold back because they said, oh, take it easy. This is not a 100-meter dash. It's a marathon. You know, you got 5 years. When you jump high, they say, take it easy. This is not a high jump, it's a broad jump. And when you're trying to jump broad, they say, look, how come you're not visible? I mean, you've got to go up. So there's no end to this kind of thing. So unless you know what is expected from you, I submit to you, the problem is that's why we do not get, because we don't know what we want. Second big problem is the not me syndrome. Public enterprises, let's say people start complaining about Indian Airlines. Go to Indian Airlines and tell them, look, sir, why don't you act like any proper airline? They'll say, we can, except that the Department of Civil Aviation does not let us. They do the backseat driving, they mess up the schedules and put airports where they should not be and all that. So they say it's the government interference. You go and talk to the civil aviation department, they'll say, well, the problem is really the politicians because they interfere too much. They are the ones who decide which aircrafts to buy, whether to do the merger or not do it. They mess up the whole functioning. You go to the politicians and tell them, look, sir, why don't you let this commercial enterprise work as a professional commercial enterprise and not interfere? And they'll appear shocked. So, excuse me? Did you say interference? We are not interfering. We are doing exactly what people have asked us to do. We are people's representatives. So in other words, people start complaining about the poor state of affairs and ultimately they are the ones who get blamed. So there's a vicious cycle of passing the buck. Nobody wants to be held accountable. And this goes on and on and on forever. There's another very common problem. When we as professionals deal with the symptoms and the causes. The real cause of many of our organization problems are performance deficit. They just do not perform. As a result, when an organization does not perform, it has low credibility. When it has low credibility, it gets lower funding. When it gets lower funding, its financial problems increase. When they increase, they aggravate the poor performance, which leads to a further widening of performance deficit. When we have a problem of this kind, what do we do normally? And this is including in the government. We don't try to fix the performance deficit. We try to fix the financial. We cut the budget, we do this, we try all kinds of financial tricks as if it's going to solve the problem. But you're only giving anacin to someone who's got a chronic disease, and anacin can reduce the fever for a short while, but cannot really cure you of the chronic disease. So I think we have to be very careful. We have this temptation to immediately jump and fix the symptoms and not the cause. So one of the things that we are trying to do is we're not trying to attempt to fix the symptoms, we're trying to go to the very fundamental cause of what is it that causes poor performance or lack of performance in the government. Let me move on to now the third bullet point, which is you've got some idea of the perception, you've got some idea of the explanations in the literature as to what people think why government organizations don't tend to perform. Let's now move to, what is the world doing about improving performance of government organizations as you look around a wide range of countries. When you look around a wide range of countries, you find there's some consensus that has emerged that when you look at the determinants of the performance of an organization, it is clear, most management experts agree, that it is the system that determines 80% of the performance. People only determine 20%. I mean, I don't have to belabor this point. We know hundreds of examples. I mean, look at all of us Indians. I mean, we are all mediocres in our country. When we go out, we shine simply because the system is such that it encourages ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Whereas when you bring giants from private sector, like Rusi Modi into Air India, what happens? I don't know. I have not heard about Mr. Rusi Modi in a long time. Air India is still here. He could not reform Air India. Air India reformed him in a hurry and swallowed him. I think he literally got swallowed. I don't know, I've not heard, and maybe I've been out of the country. I don't know what has happened. I hope he's still alive. But quite literally. And you know, when most of the current large multinational private sector is built on the backs of public enterprise managers. There's no question. I mean, you go to Reliance, to any of those, the backbone is people who work in the public enterprises. Because and when they leave, the chief executives leave in public enterprise, they get 10 times the salary. So if the people were bad, how come they get so much salary in the private sector? Why should private sector pay a public enterprise manager and chief executive if they were bad people? It's not people. They are the best people, and I can assure you when at least the secretaries to the Government of India are among the best. I have not met anybody, you know, they're really well trained, they've gone through a lot of screening, they've come through a competitive exam, and there's no question they are the best people. The reason they can't perform is simply because the system is such that it limits their ability to deliver. Now, within the 20%, the key role is of the leader. 80% of the performance depends on the leadership. So for really an organization to be effective, what you need is an effective leader and an effective system. I mean, I hate to say it, but people really matter about 4%, rank and file. They will be able to come up to the occasion if it's a good system and an inspiring leader. That's all it is. So I think, so when you look at the world around what they are doing and how they are doing, you find there are two responses to this whole issue of lack of performance of government agencies. There has been one set of response which deals with reducing the quantity of government, and the other one increases the quality of government. Reducing the quantity of government deals with pure privatization, which is just selling off, reducing the private public ownership, and traditional civil service reform. Now, by traditional civil service reforms, I mean golden handshake, cutting down the salaries, the kind of things which IMF and the World Bank have recommended to many countries. But to the credit of these organizations, they also have an independent evaluation office which evaluated about 200 loans given for civil service reform in many countries, and they found that they have not worked. So most, not only international agencies, but most countries have now abandoned this, moved over to increasing the quality of government. And I think that's where most of the action is. There again, there are two kinds of approaches. One, I'll expand that. So increasing the quality of government, one is the trickle down, and the other is the direct approach. Those of us who have done development economics would remember that in development economics also in the 80s there was this debate about growth strategies. One was that if you grow, eventually the benefits will trickle down to the poor people. So that's the trickle down. The other one was, look, that will take too long. By the time growth trickles down to the real needy, they may not be even there. They are on the margin. Can hardly stay alive. So for them, what is required is direct attack on poverty. You have to provide roti, kapda, aur makan. In other words, you have to provide direct food, shelter, and clothing. Right? Similarly, in governance, when you have public sector inefficiency, you have two approaches. One is direct approach, which is you cannot wait. Citizens are suffering. You have to have a client charter, e-procurement, e-government. These are things that can be done quickly. Why should your driver's license not be made? I mean, you have e-seva here, so you're leading the nation. I don't have to say, but in other places, I mean, this is another thing. That one part of India is doing it, and how come others are not? They're culturally the same. I mean, you can say New Zealand is different, but Andhra Pradesh is not different from any other country, any other state. Right? Even though some people here believe even within Andhra there are differences, but for us it's very hard to understand all that. For us it's even hard to understand any difference between Andhra and any other state. For me personally, I just find they're all the same. We speak the same, look the same, talk the same, think the same. And yet, one state is so far ahead in doing some of these things, other states, what are they doing? I mean, why do we need a rocket science index? This is the index of governance, something that is known to work in a particular part of the country. And if it is not being used in another part of the country, to me, that is political, moral corruption, and at least lack of governance. Because that's something you can always do. You cannot say, sir, this is difficult because it's being done. Anyhow, that's a separate story. But I think Andhra has done a good job. Many other states have done, focused on getting these things delivered through electronic means. Gujarat is doing a great job too. Okay. The other is the approach so-called performance agreement, which deals with fixing the system, which holds the top accountable and lets the accountability trickle down. This is, this is the direct attack. This is the trickle down accountability, and it creates an enabling environment. So, performance agreement is a generic name for MOU, for results agreement. It's a generic name. The inspiration for that comes from, and I hope all of you have seen it. If not, you should see. We have it on our website, but it's also on all of the websites. It goes on to say, at the core of such agreements are the objectives, and I quote, at the core of these such agreements are the objectives to be achieved, the resources provided to achieve them, the accountability and control measures, and the autonomy and flexibility that the civil servants will be given. Okay? This is what inspired our work, and we have come to the results framework document derives from here. I'm going to skip this, maybe not this one. This is an example of the performance agreement which President Clinton signed as a result of the Government Performance and Results Act of 1993. I've scanned the copy, so it's not a good scan, so I put it here so you can also see it. I don't know if you can see that side. It says performance agreement between President of USA, William Jefferson Clinton, and the Secretary of Energy, Hazel O'Leary. It's a wonderful document. I'll give you a copy so you don't have to make a copy of that. It gives the Department of Energy's goals, Department of Energy's critical success factors, and its commitments at a glance. And what I like most is the signature of the two at the bottom. So it really commits President Clinton and Hazel O'Leary at the bottom there, if you can see it. Okay? I'm afraid my pointer's battery is gone. So you can see immediately what happened was, but you can see it starts to trickle down because then the Secretary of Energy signed with the Assistant Secretary. And then it started to go down. And that's why the accountability trickles down, because the Secretary cannot deliver everything. Even in the government, the RFPs are now being signed between Secretary and Joint Secretary, so that accountability immediately trickles down. When the top gets accountable, they know they have to deliver. They can't deliver alone, they have to get the others to be part of it. And so they have these. This is the scorecard that Mr. Bush uses. So just to show that the concept of scorecard, sometimes not the best, it comes back. And so Bush was sort of a simple person. He did not believe in fancy, so he had a color-coded chart. Red means not good, green means good, and yellow means caution. So here is the current status. He's not happy with the current status, but the progress is okay, by and large. Very few reds. But the point I'm making is what we are trying to do, where we are going, is not innovative. So Bush is history, but these systems continue. Good governments are making these efforts. So don't think that private market and laissez-faire is creating the efficiency in the US. The governments are also very efficient, and they supplement the market. And that's why they work hand in hand and are efficient. New Zealand, of course, is the father of all of this. It started, this is an example, I can give you the full guidelines of their Chief Executive's Performance Agreement. When it says Chief Executive, it does not mean public enterprise. New Zealand is like us, a Commonwealth country, as you know. And like us, they have secretaries to the government. In fact, they call them permanent secretaries to the government, like in the UK. Thank God we don't call them so here. But when they introduced this reform, they abolished the title of permanent secretary to the government. They called them the Chief Executive of the Ministry of Agriculture, the Chief Executive of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and so on. Not only that, they put them on the performance agreement, and they went beyond. If you scan the Economist, London's Economist, you will often find advertisements with the seeking secretaries or chief executives for those departments. There are 2 Canadians working in the New Zealand right now as secretaries to the government. So they say we need the best person to run a particular department. It's not about New Zealanders. After all, Indian companies are being run by foreigners, and foreign companies are being run by foreigners. Americans have many foreigners running. Our Indians are running their companies.